As we've previously established, the DS era of Pokemon games was seen as the franchise's peak, but unfortunately said era was coming to an end with the release of Black 2 and White 2. A jump to 3D is all fans wanted at the time, as they felt it was well overdue, and it didn't seem like they were going to accept anything less than a fully 3D adventure. Since the 3DS was already out and admittedly failing pretty miserably, it was up to Game Freak to save the handheld and give the fans what they want. And they did just that by giving us the very first main series games in full 3D, Pokemon X and Y. I have a pretty long history with this game. I was around for the hype and build up to the release, and it was fucking electric. I sat around watching speculation video after speculation video, looking at leak after leak. It was the first time I properly bought into hype culture, because for every other Pokemon game, I just kinda went in blind because I didn't really use the internet much at the time. But around this time, I'd already gotten into Nintendo YouTubers, game reviewers, and news channels, so my young adolescent mind was ready to be polluted by hype. I was so ready to see my favourite franchise take its next big step. I was hyped. I was ready to be blown away. My dick was rock hard. And then I got the game. I got it a few months late, but I got it, and I played it, and I'll be honest, I've never been more disappointed by a game in my entire life. And I'll be upfront, till this very day, this is my least favourite pair of Pokemon games. I remember going through the game and not really having anything resonate with me. I felt so let down. Of course there was some fun to be had, but as I've mentioned in past reviews, every main series Pokemon game is fun at its core, because the formula makes it so. But even still, this game felt really unfun to me. And I've always kind of hated this game since initially playing it, but I'll be honest, I've not played through it since that initial playthrough of Y, way back when, so I always felt kind of weary complaining about it, like I was kind of misinformed only playing it once. So this review series was a perfect excuse to revisit it. So now with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at Pokemon X to see if I feel any different about it in retrospect.
Usually I wouldn't go over the little introductory bit with the professor, but this time I feel like it's kind of important, as once Sycamore introduces himself, you get to pick from a couple character customization options. Don't get it twisted, you're not building a sim here, you have two white options and a coloured option, which at the time was absolutely insane since people have been clamouring for character customization since about Gen 3, but it's not exactly anything to write home about these days. Regardless, once you've picked your look, you treat to a cute little cutscene, and after talking to your mum as you always do, you step outside and are greeted by your neighbours Shauna and either Serena or Calum depending on which gender you picked. You follow the pair to Aquacore Town where you meet two new faces, Tieno, a fat guy that's obsessed with dancing, and Trevor, a shy kid who's really into researching shit. But with the pleasantries out of the way, you can pick your starter and make your way to Santaloon City, where you can take on the bug-type loving photographer Viola. After this, you travel to Lumiose City, which is the central hub of Kalos, and meet up with Sycamore for a battle, after which he discusses a new phenomenon called Mega Evolution with you, and then gives you a free Kanto starter with its respective Mega Stone. Following that, one of the professor's aides introduces you to Lysander, an inventor who created the Holocaster, which is a holographic messaging device. You run into him again while exploring Lumiose, this time in a cafe. He's talking to a famous movie star called Diantha, and he's just spouting some inane garbage and practically simping for her, telling her more people should be like her because she makes people smile. After that weird little encounter, you explore the region of Kalos a little more, eventually finding yourself in Glittering Cave, where you'll encounter the villainous team of this game, Team Flare. The motivations aren't too clear at the moment, but you manage to take them out, allowing you to progress and take on the rock climber Grant for badge 2. With the second badge acquired, you can press on, eventually finding yourself in Geosenge Town, where you'll run into a Team Flare grunt who's conducting some research. Once he's taken care of, you try to take your leave, but you're stopped in your tracks by Corina, a girl who you met earlier in the game. She challenges you to a battle and once defeated, asks you to meet her in Shallow City. When you arrive, Tieno gives you an intriguing stone, which you take with you to the Tower of Mastery, where you meet Corina and her grandfather, who explains Mega Evolution to you and your friends. He explains how in order to unlock Mega Evolution, you must find a Pokemon's Mega Stone and possess a Mega Ring. He just so happens to have a ring, but since there are two of you who want it, you battle for it. After you beat Serena for the ring, you can finally take on the Shallow City gym leader, who just happens to be Corina. Once beat, she asks you to meet her atop the tower, and lets you have one of her Lucarios, and as you battle her with it.
I think this is a perfect time to address the elephant in the room, my opinion on Mega Evolutions. I'm not the biggest fan. While I don't necessarily think it's as egregious as some of the future gimmicks, I feel like the success of this gimmick definitely planted the seed in Game Freak's mind that if they give us a shiny new thing to play with every gen, that we won't care how bad the game is, which is obviously untrue. Leading up to release, I remember a lot of people being iffy on Megas, me being one of them, and now a lot of people are clamouring for them to come back, and I don't see why. While I will admit that if a gimmick had to stick, I'd rather it be Mega Evolution than anything else, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. I've heard a lot of people who love this shitty set of games use Megas as one of the things Gen 6 did good or did right, and I couldn't disagree more.
Sure, the concept is kinda neat, but it wasn't really needed. A lot of the Pokemon that got Megas were already viable or overpowered in some respect. You did get some that were weaker that benefited greatly from the buff, but it wasn't really needed for most of them. Especially when you consider most of the ones that got Megas were the greatly overrepresented Kanto Pokemon. In the competitive scene at the time, a lot of it was either have a Mega or get your ass kicked in, which I didn't mind, but giving up a slot for a Mega that I didn't even like just sucked. Luckily, it doesn't affect the main game too much, but Megas can definitely leave a dent in your team if you're not careful.
Also, before I move on, what the fuck is up with them giving you 3 Megas? You already have 2 before you reach a 4th gym, and it makes you extremely overpowered should you choose to use them.
But anyway, carrying on with the story, you adventure some more and eventually find yourself in Coumarin City, where you take on Ramos the Gardener for your next badge. Heading south through the Lumiose Badlands towards the city itself, you're stopped in your tracks as you're told there's no power in the city, so you check out the nearby power plant to see what's up. As expected, the place is teeming with Team Flare Grunts, and after taking them and their weird nobody admins out, you can head to Lumiose. On the way, you stumble across a giant man who mutters something about flower Pokemon to himself before disappearing. And with that weirdness out of the way, you can take on Clement, the electric inventor, for your 5th badge. You explore Lumiose a little more before moving on, and run into Sycamore and Lysander who are discussing Mega Evolution. During the conversation, it's also revealed that Lysander is of royal ancestry, which is kinda cool. After this, you meet up with your friends and waste your time in a weird little house with a creepy old man before arriving at Lavere City. It's here where you take on Valerie, a fashion designer with a knack for fairy Pokemon and dressing like one.
I'm not gonna lie, I'd do nasty things to her. Oh, and I should probably explain what a fairy Pokemon is. Due to dragon types being absolutely fucked, Game Freak decided to introduce a new type called fairy types to combat the dragons while simultaneously buffing steel and poison types. In my opinion, this was a pretty cool addition. I'm not sure how needed it was though, considering I never really had a problem with dragon types, but hey, a new type is always cool.
But regardless, once you've got the fairy badge, you'll find yourself at a local Pokeball factory that Team Flare has taken over. You quickly dispose of them, and after journeying a little further, you run into them yet again, this time harassing an Abomasnow. You defeat them and eventually arrive at Anastar City, where you can battle the Psychic Olympia for your 7th badge. Upon leaving the gym, you receive a holocaster message from Lysander, in which he lays out his plans to eradicate anyone who's in Team Flare using a special weapon, because he believes the world is ugly and is inhabited by evil people who stop the world from achieving true beauty. You eventually track down his lab in Lumiose, where he tells you he tried to change the world through peaceful and scientific means, but the world was too vast and tainted to be saved, so he's opting for something akin to a nuclear holocaust. He then leaves to put his plans into motion as he explores the lab in an attempt to stop him. When you do eventually catch up to him, you make the shocking discovery that it's called the Giant from earlier, who tells you a tale about the Great Kalos War. The story tells of a king who had a Pokemon who was a very dear friend to him, but one day war broke out, and the Pokemon decided to fight in the war, but did not make it out alive. Heartbroken, the man sought to bring the Pokemon back to life using a machine he had created, and it worked. Still enraged at the world for ripping his beloved Pokemon away from him, he decided to turn the machine into a weapon of mass destruction, dubbed the Ultimate Weapon, the very same Ultimate Weapon to be used by Lysander for his plans. The man used a weapon to kill many Pokemon, resulting in the end of the war. However, his Pokemon realised the destruction caused for his resurrection, and left the man. After the Giant story, Lysander reveals the Giant has the same name as the king from the story that took place 3,000 years ago, AZ. This is a very cool and interesting revelation, but you don't get to harp on it for too long since Lysander is still trying to start the apocalypse, so you chase after him and end up getting tricked into activating the Ultimate Weapon. You head to Geosenge Town where the weapon is located, and discover Team Flare's HQ is located in the town, and it is here where you find Lysander yet again. He reveals the weapon's power is drawn from the legendary Pokemon Xerneas, and with the weapon's power, he will rob the earth of everything, including Pokemon, which he seems to lament. However, he justifies wiping out Pokemon with the fact many selfish people use Pokemon for personal gain and destruction. He then challenges you to a battle, and after you beat him, you and Serena head to the chamber where the legendary Pokemon is being kept in order to prevent the use of its powers. You battle and capture the legendary Pokemon, and immediately after, a crazed Lysander decked out in some weird robotic gear takes you on. And once defeated in a last ditch effort to bring his plans to their fruition, he uses what little energy is left in the weapon, but it instantly backfires and he ends up destroying the weapon itself. With Team Flare defeated and some little side stuff out of the way, you can finally take on the final gym leader, the Ice type using Wulfric. And with that out of the way, you can scale Victory Road and take on the Elite Four, comprised of Sibold, the water-type loving chef, Wickstrom, the steel-type user, Drosnir, the Dragon Master, and Malva, the fire-type wielding news reporter and ex-Team Flare member. I'll be honest, this Elite Four is pretty bland and easy. As long as you've raised your Pokemon well, you're set to take them on, although you can battle them in any order just like in Gen 5, which is pretty cool. And of course, with the Elite Four defeated, you can take on the champion, which is none other than the world-renowned actress Diantha. Her team is okay, but she's definitely my least favourite champion. She's a relative nobody to the player despite being told she's famous and strong, and her character isn't really anything to write home about. But with her defeated, you get inducted into the Hall of Fame and actually get a whole last ceremony, which is pretty cool. And during said ceremony, AZ shows up, and once you battle him, his Floette comes back for some reason, and with that, the credits roll.
And that's a plot of X and Y. The bland plot. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, playing this game again did not change my opinion on it at all. Sure, I may have noticed some nice little details, or things here and there that I liked, but for the most part, I left this playthrough feeling the exact way I thought I would. Relieved. I was so relieved it was over. This is such a nothing entry, which is surprising for a Pokemon game, a main series game no less. I tried my best to be open-minded going into this game, and I think I did well with that, but the more I progressed in the game, the more my patience grew thin.
The thing that I think wore me down the most was the story. It's just so bland and forgettable. There are nuggets of potential throughout, such as a theme of life and death, but it's only really explored through interactions with Lysander and AZ, and nowhere else as far as I can remember, apart from the legendaries being the Bringer of Life and Bringer of Death respectively. Also, since we're on the topic of characters like Lysander, why are he and AZ the only interesting characters in the whole game? Don't get me wrong, some of the other characters had the opportunity to be decent, like Serena and Diantha, but they did fuck all with them, or in Serena's case, just played it way too safe. I do see what they were trying to do with the rivals/companions, with all of your friends having a different approach to being a Pokemon trainer. Tierno is making a theme team based around his interest in dance, Trevor is aspiring to fulfill a goal, i.e. research, Shauna is more of the casual trainer just living a life, and Serena is a classic friendly rival. I feel like they're trying to capture the vibe of Ash's companions from the anime, but it didn't translate well at all, and I'm not completely sure if they could make it work, unless they were treated as a classic JRPG style party, and accompanied you everywhere. Oh, and don't worry, Lysander and AZ aren't off the hook either. I'll tackle Lysander first. To me, Lysander isn't all that bad. He's got a somewhat noble goal, but he's kinda in the same boat as Cyrus, and while you could argue he's a better character, he still feels somewhat one note like Cyrus. I mean, they proved they could write a decent character with N and Getsu, so I don't see why they went with this boring and one-note villain that just feels like a missed opportunity. All of the pieces were there, they just refused to complete the puzzle. I mean, one of the more interesting things about him is his potential relation to another more interesting character. How bad does your villain have to be for that to be the case? And don't get me started on AZ. This big hobo looking ass bitch is arguably the best part of this game, and is barely fucking in it. Why? So we can have more of Tierno and Trevor bickering about fuck knows what, or maybe even some more of those Team Flare battles, or hey, maybe even some more of those Kanto callbacks, since we did have enough of those already, did we? This dude probably has like 10 lines of dialogue, and just when his character gets interesting, the game is over. I can't be fucking arsed.
And that's a common theme with this game. Things feel underdeveloped or just short of being good, or at the very least just passable. Take the region for example. Kalos is based on France. France is a beautiful place full of rich and vibrant history. So why did they struggle so hard to capture that? Every town just feels so drab and grey and just so lifeless and forgettable. Although according to some of my friends, France is a drizzling shit, so maybe they didn't have much beauty to pull from after all. But knowing Game Freak, they cherry pick the best bits of France, and if this is the best France has to offer, I don't ever want to go there.
The lifelessness of Kalos isn't helped by the fact that the 3D models of characters look, well, lifeless. The game is graphically pleasant but hasn't aged the best. A lot of the colours look washed out, the models are statues, and a lot of the Pokemon models just shit over the coolness of the original designs. I mean, look at Xatu, it looks so dumb. Of course, for the time, these graphics were passable and actually surprisingly good, considering it was Game Freak's first real foray into 3D after messing with 3D in Gens 4 and 5. But history hasn't been too kind to these graphics. A lot of the visual effects are generic, the chibi kite models can be hit or miss, and even after updates, the frame rate still chugs, especially during double battles and horde encounters, which are introduced in this game alongside sky battles. Also, since we're on the topic of models, with the jump to 3D, Game Freak had the opportunity to make some of the most creative and cool looking Pokemon to date. What they did instead was create the most forgettable roster in the franchise, bar none. Do you mean to tell me that Game Freak's idea of capturing the beauty of an entire country and condensing it into a 40-hour adventure was creating ugly and shitty Pokemon like Furfrou, Aromatisse, Slurpuff, Barbarical, Dragolgi and Carbink? Even some of the Pokemon people like from this gen I'm not too fond of, like Talonflame, Pyro, Hawlucha and yes, even Greninja. There's almost nothing I like here at all. I honestly don't think a single one of these Pokemon could scratch my top 100. Malamar and Trevenant are kinda cool I guess, but I don't know, nothing in this gen speaks to me, and that's not me being over the top for the sake of ranting about this game, I genuinely feel like this.
I will say the way the wider roster of Pokemon is used is pretty smart, but that doesn't really mean anything when the native roster is ass, which it is. I kinda feel like they were hoping Megas would count for something, and in terms of design, some of them are pretty decent, but for the main bulk of new Pokemon, they're very inoffensive, but still so bland and forgettable, I might as well be offended.
Now I don't want to shit on this game completely because it did do some good stuff, mainly with side modes like Super Training and Pokemon Ami. Super Training and Pokemon Ami are two new side modes that appeal to both hardcore fans and casuals respectively. Super Training is a way for you to train up specific stats of your Pokemon to make it fit a competitive team better. This is known as EV training and was a nightmare in older generations, but here it's easier than ever, unlocked from the start, and if you want to change something you can reset the stats too. Pokemon Ami is more of the Nintendo style interact with your Pokemon and play minigames of it kind of thing, which is pretty cool. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it is pretty useful since once you reach a threshold, your Pokemon can dodge moves easier and land critical hits more often, so if you wanted this already easy game to be easier, there you go. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, character customization is in this game too. It's not the deepest and most complex thing you'll ever find, but being able to pick how you look, as well as your clothes, is a great step forward. There are also a lot of quality of life changes that help with grinding and competitive play, such as the roller skates and EXP share.
All of that stuff is great, but this game is still really disappointing to me. This game was hyped to the moon and back upon release, and hey, maybe it's my fault for buying into hype culture, but how could I not when my favourite YouTubers are pulling shit like this?
This game is so good.
I mean, there's so much charm and personality missing from this game for me. Even the soundtrack sucks minus a few standout tracks. And some of them stand out for the wrong reasons, like Serena's theme for example. It sounds like some sort of royalty-free song some YouTuber would model dresses to. But all kidding aside, I do understand that there were going to be some growing pains in the transition into 3D, so playing it safe was kind of required in this scenario. But I think they played it a little too safe. Nothing really stands out in this game, not to me at least. I'd be really interested in hearing what some of the Gen 6 fans have to like about this game, because personally, I hate the roster, don't care for the soundtrack, can barely remember any of the region or characters, and the story feels rushed and incomplete. That's basically everything that makes a Pokemon game.
On the surface, this is the most inoffensive Pokemon game ever, considering the fact that in a lot of ways, it plays it safe. But once you dig a little deeper, you realise what a shallow and boring experience it can be at times. Again, growing pains are one thing, but a game that can take up to 40 or 50 hours to beat, that is one of the most forgettable experiences in the franchise, is another. Not every generation has to be Gen 5 with its serious and sometimes dark tone, but they could have at least tried to carry over some of what made those games so great. Instead, we got a really watered down, kid-friendly experience that doesn't really reward the player at all for doing anything. It's some serious tonal whiplash coming off of Gen 5, and I could forgive it if it at least had something to offer, but it doesn't. The most egregious part about the change in tone is that it's coming directly off the most mature set of Pokemon games ever made, which weren't perfect mind you, but Jesus Christ, what happened there?
I tried my absolute best to be impartial and remove all biases while looking at these games, but all that did was make me hate them even more. Because from a critical perspective, they suck. I imagine a casual gamer or maybe a kid could find something to enjoy from these games, but unless you enjoy competitive battling and live in 2013, you're most likely not going to enjoy these games going back to them. If you're a hardcore fan and really want to play all the games, go for it, be my guest. But for anyone else, I'd say skip these entries. They have nothing to offer in my eyes. Also, before I go, cool announcement, I've got some music coming out. It's not the best, but I'm trying to improve, so I hope some of you guys check it out. And also I have a Patreon, so feel free to subscribe to that. I'm going to be handing out some cool rewards for all of that stuff. You get early access and all of that shit, but I don't want to be long-winded with this. Feel free to check it out yourself, and same with the music. And yeah, anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.